All right, welcome back, everybody. This is the NALC Branch 458 podcast, and today's episode is going to be a very good one. There's a special guest, an honorable guest that's going to be here, and I'll let them introduce themselves. Um, but just a little bit about this person. The very first time that I was able to sit in a class with this person teaching the class was here at the branch hall. It was over route count inspections, which is the topic of this episode today. But from the minute that this person started talking in that class, I was hooked because I wanted to protect my route. I wanted to know exactly what to do. And this person is just an absolute guru on route inspections. It was my art in the tier reap adjustment. So as you know, there were steps to that. So I was the district lead, and this person was directly above me as the area regional team. So the next voice you will hear, I'll just jump right into it, will be this person introducing themselves.
All right. Hey, everybody. Thank you, Casey, for allowing me to be on your podcast. My name is John Robles. I am a regional administrative assistant for NALC Region 4. And of course, we do cover Oklahoma. So,
Yeah, I'm
again,
glad
thank
that
you,
you're on here
Casey,
with
for
us.
having me. Appreciate that, brother. So, I guess we're talking about uh, that breaded route inspection thing today, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's something I know you're aware of. I'll let you know we have at least one station here in Oklahoma City that was notified that they're getting a route inspection. I think it's on September 14th. So it's coming up pretty quick at Britain Station. So for sure, those carriers, maybe we just have a conversation about how they can prepare for it, and then obviously other members how they can prepare for possibly receiving a route adjustment in the future. So I guess let's start from the beginning. What's something that carriers should be expecting going into a route adjustment?
Well, it's good that we're talking to the members right before an inspection, because we have all sorts of trainings on how to file grievances on route inspections, because of course management does everything wrong most of the time, and
Yeah.
we end up filing multiple grievances on a single count. But to sit here and just kind of go through the basics with the rank and file, I think is very important. And so, you know, I think one thing, obviously carriers are going to, going to expect to be counted. They're going to expect to have management go out on the street with you. So we could probably cover all aspects of office time, street time, and things of that nature, but cover a little bit of before the count, what they can expect during and then after the count. So I guess we start at the beginning, like you said, before the count. Just a quick explanation of how a evaluation is determined, or how management goes about evaluating routes, because not a lot of people know that. And so there's two very distinct procedures that management uses to evaluate a route. One procedure being evaluation of office time, the other procedure, evaluation of street time. And so basically, office time is it's based on the time that is used by the regular carrier, okay, or replacement carrier. But we're talking to regular carriers out there. If you are a regular on the route, then they will only be using your office time, and that office time is the time that you use during the count week. So during the 6-day count, it has nothing to do outside of that, or what is called a standard time. The standard time is basically a computation of hand recorded counts and volumes that are based on an 18 and 8 standard. I think most people
Mhm.
know what the 18 and 8 standard is, which is, we could be required to case up to 18 letters a minute and 8 flats per minute. And so typically the office time is evaluated based on the lower of either time. So either the average actual time of the regular carrier during the week, count an inspection, okay, or the average standard office time during the week inspection, and based on the 18 and 8 calculations.
And that's just office time. So we're
That is, yeah,
so going back to the regular carrier on the route, and I'm just trying to anticipate some questions. What if you got a carrier that's out on long-term leave and you've had a CCA have a hold down on that route for, let's just, for the sake of talking about it, for their entire career so far? Would
right.
they be considered the regular on the route for a route adjustment purpose?
Yeah, vacant routes, like you said, if they're not there during the week of inspection, or if they're on a long-term leave, or whatever, it may not necessarily be considered vacant, but it hasn't been carried by the regular for a significant amount of time. Uh, what we have in place of that is that there must be a qualified replacement carrier assigned to the route in order for the data collected to be considered valid. Okay, so um, that's going to be a judgment call that most likely the steward is going to have to get involved with, right? Because you can have uh, you can have somebody who has opted the route, and let's just say they've been on that opt for a month, but maybe they're a fairly new carrier, and maybe we know that they're not necessarily deliver and mail by the book the way it's supposed to be. We can always push as stewards or union activists to prompt management to pick somebody else, such as the T6. You could have a T6 who carries the mail by the book, and they've been the T6 on that specific route for 3 or 4 years. I mean, why not pick the T6 to be a qualified replacement? But the basic answer to that is got to have a qualified replacement on that route.
Yeah, and that's a good thing for us too, right? Because it's someone that knows the route, knows the territory, that's kind of familiar with it. Because you definitely don't want to go into an adjustment and it be your first time carrying the route, or you're unfamiliar with it, because it probably wouldn't end up good.
Yeah, there's a lot of misconception with route adjustments and the movement of territory. Uh, you know, uh, you really want to have the week of inspection, somebody carrying the route, if they're a replacement, as close to what the regular carrier is doing. Because if not, you're mixing apples and oranges, and the territory adjustment could be in a way that either they move entirely too much territory off that route, and the regular is left with a short route when they come back, or they don't take enough off of the route, and the route is still over 8 hours after it's adjusted.
Yeah,
So it's
so
always a good idea. And that's an important thing for if you're the regular carrier on the route, you don't want to do things any differently than you do throughout the year. You don't want to speed up during the mail count the week of inspection. You don't want to slow down during the week of inspection. Everything should be, and again, this everybody has heard it a million times, and because we've said it a million times. But you know, we want carriers to perform the duties on their routes the same every day of the year, not just the week of inspection. And that should be by the book, of course.
yeah, carry your route every day as if you're being followed. Something that,
Yes.
I've heard 100 times. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I have that written down to talk about is your habits on a day to day. If you go into an inspection thinking, "Oh, I'm a good route checker. I'm somebody that I can do what's right when they're following me." It's just human nature. If it's not something that you do every day, you're probably going to slip up and they're going to see it. So if it's something
Yeah.
where you usually take a shortcut where it's unsafe just to shave off some time, but during your route check, you don't do them and you take the right way. I mean, we leave paths everywhere we walk, and you might try to go that way and then correct yourself and, oh, I'm being followed today. I got to do it this way. So, yeah, you want to carry your route the same every day, just like you're being followed, and do it the correct way, just like you're being followed every
Correct.
day.
Yeah, and here's the thing, right? We talked about the evaluation of office time and them using your actual time or your standard estimated time during the week of inspection. Well, here's the important thing, and we talk about carrying our route the same all the time. Street time is based on one of two computations. Street time, the evaluation of street time is the average street time of the regular carrier, right, including any auxiliary assistance they might get during the week of mail count and inspection, or the average street time of the regular carrier from an 8-week time card analysis. And the 8-week time card analysis uses 7 weeks that occurred prior to the route count and inspection, excluding June, July, August, and December. So if management uses your 8-week time card analysis to evaluate your street time, and those 7 random weeks that they pull from the past, you were shortening your breaks, shortening your lunch, skipping comfort stops, disregarding safety rules, all that is it's water under the bridge. It's already done, and there's nothing
Yeah.
you could do to change that. And so, unfortunately, a lot of carriers, if they've never been through typical management-initiated route count and inspections, they have not practiced this, you know, and they learn a lot from their first route count and an inspection, because a lot of times they get added to, and
Yeah.
they wonder why. And it's for a lot of those reasons are because of what I just mentioned, that the time that has already gone by where the carrier has not, really done things by the book. And of course, if, some of our carriers, they feel intimidated by management. They let management, uh, you know, in so many different ways, they let management talk them into skipping breaks, skipping lunches, by continually, hey, you didn't make your street time yesterday, or DOA says you should be back at 3:46 today, or whatever the case may be. We have to stick to our guns, trust that the union is going to file those grievances if management is bullying you or harassing you, and stick to the M41 and carry your routes by the book.
Yeah, and that's something that that we're always going to have that confrontation in the morning with management because they're always going to want us to go faster. And what I like to say is squeeze water from a rock and get us to do something we can't do, or we're going to sacrifice some of our own time that we have fought for in our collective bargaining agreement to get breaks, to get lunches, to get comfort stops, or you might even put yourself in harm's way in this heat and not take a break that you really need. And then you're going to be out for days because you suffered from something in the heat, which is unfortunate, but it happens. So we definitely need to continue to take our breaks, continue to take our lunches and our comfort stops. And management out there, they'll be sneaky with your breaks too. You'll stop for your 10-minute break, and they might ask you like, "Hey, is this your break?" Yeah, it's my break. Well, you want to go ahead and do your comfort stop while we're here? And because I've had them do that to me before. So if you got to go, you got to go. But don't let them trick you into not doing something that you normally wouldn't do. So I'm glad you brought that up. So now before the adjustment, they do a dry run. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. There's a lot of things that management's required to do prior to the mail count and inspection week, and so they have to do at least once a year. They should be doing a route and unit review. They should be doing a pre-inspection review and correcting certain things. Should be doing a dry run and posting advance notices, and all of those things. If they don't do them correctly, we will be grieving them. But As far as the review and the corrections, and again, this is to the rank and file who can help themselves. You know, this is not just teaching people how to file a grievance. So everybody out there, just understand that if you have uh, inadequate case equipment, labels, your edit book is not up to date, those things, if they need attention, let management know and let's get these things straightened out before the week of inspection. And that is a requirement for management. Updating the 1564A and B, um, where you take your breaks, where you take your lunch, your line of travel to and from the route, all those things that can be found on the 1564A and B, as well as any sort of special circumstances where you may, let's just say you have an apartment route, but you have some handicapped people that you have to take the mail to their door and they have a mailbox on their apartment door. All these special types of deliveries and things like that should be on your 1564A and B, and those things need to be updated. So, but jumping into the dry run training. Now, the dry run training, management has to provide instruction and give you an actual example practice count of what is called the 1838C. And the 1838C is what you document everything that you do in the office in the AM and the PM. The reason I kind of chuckled a little bit when I said management must provide instruction, they generally do a very, very poor job of doing the dry run training with carriers. And I think that it's for two reasons. One reason, they don't know as much as they should about route inspections in general. Number two is the less they teach you and the less you know, the less items you're going to put on that 1838C, which is going to result most likely in giving the appearance that the carrier did not make standards. And so there's just a lot of things that are involved, but an actual practice run, they should be doing a complete one with every single carrier, not just the regular carrier on the route. Everybody who's going to be carrying mail during the count and inspection week. And so usually when we go out as a union and we provide training to the rank and file, it's a good idea to do a dry run training with them to show them how it's really done as opposed to management. They're gonna skim through it. They're not going to do a thorough job. And so I kind of want to talk, if it's okay, Casey, about the different line items and the different things that carriers would be putting on the 1838C. Is that
Yeah,
okay?
absolutely. And before you talk about that, we are doing a class here at the hall on September 11th at 6 o'clock for anyone that wants to
Perfect.
come to that. And we will be talking about line items again on the 1838Cs.
Okay, yeah. So there's several things, and the experienced carriers out there may have heard of these line items. They may have even completed the 1838Cs on their own. But basically, what the 1838C does is everything that you log on that 1838C, if what you're doing is not accounted for, then it gives the appearance that you're casing mail. And so that's how they determine if you're making those office standards. So anytime we are doing something, we should be associating it, doing something besides casing mail, we should associate it with a different line item. And so it's not like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's kind of weird the way it's done, but we'll start with line 14. Line 14 is accountable mail. So anytime a carrier spends retrieving their accountables, whether they go to the cage or the clerk comes around to the carrier case, anytime you stop doing what you're doing and you're retrieving your accountable mail, you're signing for it, you're partially completing the 3849, that time that you use is recorded as a line 14 item. Okay. And so if you don't want to cut any corners with that. A lot of times what I see mistakes that carriers make with line 14 is they will check out mail in the morning. And this goes for your keys too, right? Your arrow keys. That's an accountable item. If you sign for arrow keys every morning, you have a line 14. But the mistake I see with line 14 and carriers is when they come back in the afternoon, there's no line 14 time. Well, if you had line 14 time in the morning, you have it in the evening too. Whether it takes a minute or, you could think, well, that's insignificant. Again, everything is significant. And so if you checked out arrow keys in the morning, you should have a line 14 time in the afternoon because you have to check those arrow keys back to the accountable clerk when you get off the street. So real important to think about. There's always things that you're going to complete on that 1838C in the PM as well.
Yeah. I think that's something
Line
that people
15.
forget about is that 5 minutes in the PM for the fixed office time. And I know I forget
Yeah.
about it sometime, but yeah, there's a PM. So you're right. I think it's forgotten
Mm-hmm.
about.
Yeah, it does. And again, going back to management's dry run training, I can always tell when the NALC has done a dry run training or if it's just management that does a dry run training. Because you will see when we perform the trainings, the 1838C is filled out with a lot of things. But when management does it, I've seen as little as 4 or 5 things written on that thing, which is not good for the carrier. If anybody is interested in looking at the M39 or the M41, in the M39, you have time allowances for carrier office work, and that's where it talks about these line items that I'm mentioning. So the M39, if you just go to page 98, I think it is, you can look at what's called base minimum allowances. And what I mean by that is, so for line 14, your base minimum allowance is 6 minutes. Okay, so no matter how much time you take on accountables, you will be given 6 minutes for line 14 time. And so if that's what you're given, take it. Okay, use the 6 minutes. Again, you're partially completing those 3849s in the office as well. Jumping to line 15, that has to do with the withdrawal of mail. And basically, that's any time you are pulling mail from the hot case, removing mail from trays or tubs or sacks, cutting the plastic off of your flat bundles to case, cutting the twine, the plastic straps, whatever. And it also includes the time that you walk to the hot case and back. Okay. Again, all of this stuff, very important that you record these times when you started that function and when you completed it. And you don't do it by seconds. You round off to the next minute. So that time, withdraw mail, you could be withdrawing mail, I don't know, 3 or 4 times every morning. And so it's kind of odd when I look at an 1838C and I only see a line 15 written down once. The line 15 has a base minimum allowance too, and that is 5 minutes. So we should be taking at least 5 minutes. They will give you those base minimums. If you take more, then it is what it is. You're allowed. Okay? If it takes you 7 minutes or 8 minutes or whatever, cumulative, then that's what they give you credit for. Okay? Let's see. Line 16 is sequencing and collating bypass mail. Now, you mentioned they're doing some route count and inspections the week of September 14th, Casey. Are they doing routes that are parking loops?
Yeah, it's the whole office, so it's going to be in that zone. It's pretty much everything. It's got mixed, so business, walking, and some mounted.
Okay. All right. So line 16, sequencing and collating bypass mail. As we all know, as if you're on a park and loop route, the carrier is not required to carry more than 3 bundles. So if you've got BPS, case mail, you've got 2 full coverages, uh, or whatever, you don't have to carry 4 bundles. So in those cases, you would be able to collate uh, mail. And typically, what you would do is, let's just say you have advos and you need to collate that day because you have more than 3 bundles. Then what you would do typically is take your cased mail, and as you pull down the case mail, you feather it in order and mix that in with your advos. And again, this is for park and loops. Time that you actually take collating your mail down to the adequate amount of bundles is that it's given to you. So there's really no base minimum allowance or anything like that. It's basically what you took is what you get credit for. You're going to see a line 17 on the 1838C, but that is a very, very old. It's called strapping out, actual pull down time, and a lot of people uh, perceive that as strapping out. Oh, that's when I'm cutting the straps. That's not what it is. Strapping out time is not used anymore. It was typically on curbside delivery, out the window,
Hmm.
where in the carrier case there was more than 2 addresses in the separation. So when the carrier was pulling down, they would actually have to put that in order. But so line 17, you're not going to do anything with that. Of course, line 18 is break time. You will get credit for your office break if the local union has an office break in their station. Line 19 is vehicle inspection. Base minimum time for vehicle inspection is 3 minutes, but this is one where I really think that if you're using 3 minutes, then you're not doing a vehicle inspection correct way.
Hmm.
And I've seen it before. A lot of carriers, they will go outside in the morning. They will stick that key in the lock. They'll unlock the door. They won't even sit inside the truck. They'll just stick the key inside of the ignition, turn the ignition to see if it starts, and they're done with it. That's not an inspection. That's just them seeing if the vehicle starts.
Yeah.
Um, as most people know, when they're trained, it's like a 26, 27 point inspection, right? Where you're actually looking under the vehicle to see if there's any oil spills or transmission fluid spills. You're checking your tires. You're checking to see if there's new damage to the vehicle. You're checking your mirrors. You're checking your lights. You're checking everything. You're checking to see if your accident kit is in there, if your little diagram that shows the clearance of your vehicle, all these things that we should be checking every day. And we should also be using the buddy system because obviously, how are you going to check your brake lights unless you've got some sort of mirror that you're backed up to or something, which most of us don't have? You're gonna have the person next to you. You're gonna have them make sure your brakes and reverse lights work, and then you're going to turn around and do the same for them. So vehicle inspection is where I see a lot of people cut corners. Just remember that as soon as you clock in, if the first thing you're doing is going for a vehicle inspection, that is the time taken retrieving the keys to the vehicle until you come back inside and start to perform another function. And so, especially in some of these larger units, it's going to take way longer than 3 minutes to complete the process.
Yeah.
Line 20 is personal needs. Just so everybody knows, line 20, uh, no entry is made on the 1838C for a line 20. You automatically get 5 minutes of personal time, and that's part of your standard office time. So unless you're local, your LMOU has maybe more than 5 minutes. I've seen some with 8, I've seen some with 10, whatever. You're going to get that 5 minutes automatically. But if your local says you have more, you make sure you want to get credit for that. And if you think you're not, then you want to see your steward to make sure that they correct that.
And there's a note
Um,
on the 1838, isn't there, about line 20? Doesn't it say? Um, something about not recording it, that it's in there automatically. I think that's on there.
I believe so. Yeah, yeah. So you're typically not going to write anything for line 20. Now, here's the thing. Getting into a couple more line items, and there's only a few left. When management does the dry run training, they're going to try to get carriers to believe that many things are a line 22 as opposed to a line 21. And I'm going to explain both lines 21 and 22 right now to make sure, and this is very important, that our carriers don't get caught up in management's deception. Let's
Yeah,
just put it
traps.
that way. Yes. Yeah. So line 21 is recurring office activities that are not covered by these other line items that I just spoke about. And so as everybody knows, well, you do a lot more than just do a vehicle inspection and check out your accountables and withdraw mail and stuff like that. You do a lot more, right? Do you set up your scanner every day? Well, obviously, because that's how you're clocking in, right? And you have to set up your scanner. That's something that's done every day, but it's not covered by another line item. Okay, so that would be something, because it's a recurring office activity, to record that. So we should be seeing a lot of line 21 items because we do a lot of things outside of these other line items. And so I could give you some examples. If you have, and I know Oklahoma City, they probably have some routes that have window caller services. You're attending to window caller service, that's a line 21. Anytime we attend a weekly safety stand-up, which is required, management is required to do at least one weekly safety talk a week. Anytime they do a safety talk, that is a line 21. Anytime a carrier is traveling to and from the throwback case or taking back markup mail, that is a line 21. If you're replenishing your rubber bands in your pouch, or you're getting more 3849s to take out on the street with you and put in your satchel, any type of replenishment that you do in the office would be a line 21. Again, as far as that personal needs, if your local memorandum of understanding gives you more than 5 minutes of personal needs, then you can record that extra time. Wash-up time is a line 21. Any sort of official communications, like a clerk comes to you to retrieve somebody who's there to pick up their vacation hold mail, line 21. These are things that are part of our everyday duties. When we pull down, right, we want to check our little cubbies or wherever we store our hold mail, and we want to make sure we're not resuming any vacation holds. When we're doing that, we're recording that as line 21. If we're updating an edit book, line 21. If you're a steward and you're handling grievances, you're speaking to a carrier, meeting with them quick. It's something a steward does every day, and that would be a line 21. When you get back off of the street and you're returning empty equipment, that would be a line 21. So just think about it this way. Anything that you do on a daily basis, right, that's outside of the other line items we talk about, you're going to record as a line 21 time. You're completing a 3996. This is one that management tries to say, no, that's not recurring. That's a line 22. Well, line 22 is a non-recurring. And what they try to do is get lots of line 22s, because a non-recurring office work that is not being done all the time or repeatedly, you don't get credit for that. That's why they want line 22s. Well, if I'm on a route that I typically put in 3996 once or twice a week, that's a line 21. The only time completion of the 3996 would be a line 22 is if you complete that 3996 during the week of inspection and you say, I'm going over because I had to count my mail today and it's taken me longer. So my advice to everybody out there would be, if you're turning in a 96, just do it the way you do it any other time of the year and just list why you need it. I've got 14 feet of DPS. I've got 62 spurs that I've got to case. I've got 49 parcels. I have 3 certified letters. I have a full coverage. Whatever it is, don't indicate that the reason you need overtime during the week is only because of the route count and inspection, if that makes sense. Again, retrieving scanners, returning the scanners. Let's see, everybody is required, or not required, they're allowed to verify their DPS count. Well, why do we go over to where the DPS is staged in the morning? We go over there to help us determine our workload, right? Whether or not I need to fill out a 3996. So if you're in the habit of checking your DPS every day, that's a line 21 time, okay? So I don't know if, Casey, if you have the little pocket book, the route inspection pocket handbook at your office, or if you're going to be handing those out for training, but that's something that we could probably get to carriers and get to your branch if you need. And there's a lot of good advice on line 21s here in this little book.
Yeah, we do have some, and I'll check to make sure we have enough, and if not, I'll let you know so we can get some.
Okay, perfect. So line 22, again, that's non-recurring office work not covered by other line items. And so if you're waiting for mail, if you're not doing any work whatsoever, you're waiting for mail, that would be a line 22. Now, I know a lot of people are saying, well, what if I wait for mail every day? I wish we got credit for waiting, but we don't. And that's just the way it is. So waiting for mail would be a legitimate line 22. If the route examiner comes to speak with you about the route count and inspection, that would be in line 22. Because why? Any other time of the year, you're not going to have a route examiner coming up and asking you questions. So that would be a legitimate line 22. There are not a lot of reasons we should have line 22s, and management will try to make you think otherwise. So just be aware of that.
And
The
that's
last
something else that they're
item,
sneaky about too.
they're very sneaky about that, and
Yeah.
that generates a lot of grievances when we go back as stewards and we look at and examine the 1838Cs and we see a significant amount of 22s. What's going to happen to the carriers every day when they get off the street, they should have the 1838C, what they completed in the morning, sitting for them to retrieve to complete in the PM, but also to see what management may or may not have redlined. And you'll see a lot of 21s redlined, and management changes them to 22, and that should raise a red flag for all of us. See a lot of that as a carrier. Take that to your steward and have him look at that and see what's going on. The line 23 is the last line item, and that you would complete as a line 23 anytime you're counting mail or actually filling out the 1838C sheet. Okay? So counting mail and filling out the form is a task that the carrier performs only during the week count and inspection. Okay? So although you write down the time it takes to perform the task, management will subtract that time when they evaluate your route later. Why? Because any other day of the year, you're not filling out an 1838C or counting your mail. During the week of inspection, just lastly on these line items on the 1838C, unless you have something else, Casey, I have recently seen, as recently as Saturday, we had a carrier who did not get the dry run training. And so because they did not get the dry run training, Management said, that's okay, we'll just count the mail for you. The
Oh,
only day that management fills out the 1838C is the day of inspection. And if they try to do it any other day, tell your steward right away.
and that's something that, we argue all the time as stewards. They'll try to do an 1838C office count on like three carriers at one time. So I could imagine if they didn't give that carrier the dry run training, they probably didn't give the rest of the office the dry run training. And how are two or three supervisors going to fill out 1838Cs accurately for the entire office? I don't see
Correct.
how they can
Correct.
do that.
Yeah. No, it's pretty much impossible. They could barely
Yeah.
keep track of one route, for that matter.
Yeah. So there is something that you kind of mentioned about counting the mail. So us as carriers, that one day that management counts our mail for us and they're filling out the 1838C, we have a right to verify the count that they made and recorded on that 1838C. So that includes everything that they recorded on the 1838C. So that line, whenever management records it, would they record that under 22 or 23?
They it's either one because you don't get credit for. Uh, but I would probably say it would be 23 because you're actually verifying the count.
And a lot of people, they think of that as like just, oh, we're just being difficult. But it's important because that's something that's recorded on a postal form that's used for adjusting our routes. And whenever we verify the count, it's not to cause problems or to slow down the process or anything like that. It's what if they wrote down the wrong thing and we finished our route in 8 hours that day, but we had like significantly less volume. Or they might do the opposite. They might record that we have a ton of volume and we finished our route in 8. And then, there's carriers all the time that are being told, well, you carried your route with this much volume on this day and this time, so why can't you do it now? So that's why to me it's
Yeah,
important that we count we do that every single time that we get an office count. We verify
yeah,
management's numbers.
yeah. I agree. How many people out there uh, trust their lives with their supervisor or manager? How many
Yeah.
people out there would have their supervisor or manager babysit your kids? Hopefully, it's zero, because
Yeah.
I've yet to found any that I can trust. And so they might think of it as that way because you know how they are. They think that every carrier plays games, that every carrier is out there milking it. And that's simply not the case. And we know that. So it is very important to verify the count. And I do want to mention something while we're on this subject of counting and line 22s and line 23s. I've seen a lot of times in the past, especially during the joint processes, where let's just say you're the regular on a route, right? You've been thrown into this mess, and it's like, why? My route's 8 hours. It's good. They're going to figure out it's 8 hours when they do my evaluation, and they're not going to mess with me, right? And that carrier who they might be telling the truth, right? It is a solid 8 hour route. They very rarely put in for overtime. They very rarely have undertime. It is just a consistent 8 hour route. Well, then the week of inspection comes, and guess what? They carry it in 8 hours every single day. Well, they think, all right, I'm 8. I'm golden. Well, what the carrier didn't think about is no matter what, you were going to have line 23 time. You're going to have some, most likely, line 22 time. And again, you don't get credit for that. So carriers should pay particular attention when they see that 1838C as they're filling it out in the morning and they're verifying the count when management's filling it out. If I spent 23 minutes counting mail, And 5 minutes on a line 22 for whatever reason, that's 28 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Should I be filling out a 39.96 for at least 28 minutes that day? And
Yeah.
again, give the reasons of your volume and all that stuff, not the other. But again, you go 8 hours and you use that time on line 22 and 23, you just shorted yourself 28 minutes. And chances are they're going to try to evaluate your route at 7.5 hours.
Yep. I've even
So I hope
seen
that
that,
sticks with you.
during the year, whenever management goes out with a carrier that they feel like's having some trouble, and they'll talk to the carrier out on the street and they'll record that time as waiting other on their, I mean, we're talking about 99, so it's different than 1838s, but then the carrier will get back at their normal time, put their things away and clock out in 8 hours. And see, I told you. And they just shorted their route for the same reason because they didn't think about that time that was deducted.
Correct. Yeah. So, yeah, that's. I tell you, one of the biggest things that we could be in control of during the week of inspection is paying attention to properly filling out that 1838C. That's a big one. One more
Okay.
thing I want to talk about with office time is markup mail. And I see management playing a lot of games with markup mail. And so a lot of carriers, they they don't know what we mark up in bundles and what we have to mark up as individual pieces. And so just so everybody knows out there, for markup mail, you don't really make a time entry, but you fill it in a different portion of the 1838C, which thankfully Casey will be doing a training on here in a couple of weeks. But you receive 1 minute for every 10 pieces to separate the mail, and 1 minute for every 4 pieces to actually mark up. And so there's different kinds of endorsements for bundled markups where you just mark the top piece. And so that would be attempted not known, no such number, insufficient address, return to sender, unclaimed, unable to forward, box closed. And those you would endorse the top piece, your route number and initials, and then band that all up and put it in the markup case. Now, management, they try to get away with saying everything is bundled markups, but there are certain markups where we have to endorse each individual piece of mail with the route number, endorsement, and our initials. And that would be for occupant mail. That's only addressed to occupant with electronic service requested, address service requested, forwarding service requested, return service requested, change service requested. So occupant mail addressed to vacant buildings, those are individual markups. Mail addressed to customers who were temporarily away, customers who have died and they're deceased, refused mail, and mail where there is no receptacle. And so those we should be marking up each and every one of those. Okay. Any type of forwarding mail, CFS mail, letters and flats, we endorse the top piece of the bundle, send it on its way. And so just make sure you're not cutting corners when you're dealing with undeliverable mail. And I think that pretty much covers the office category, unless you have something else, Casey.
No, I mean this is a topic that we could probably do several episodes over on a podcast or several classes over. So I think that pretty much covers office, generally anyway. So yeah,
Okay.
let's move on to the street.
Okay. So I guess a couple things, especially the day of inspection when the examiner is out with us and accompanying us, watching us do everything. Now, first of all, the conduct of the examiner, they are your observer that day. They are not your supervisor. Okay? They should not be giving you instructions on how you should be delivering your route or telling you to change what you're doing out there. Um, the only thing they can really stop you from doing is if you're doing something unsafe. And at that point, they would pretty much stop you. And what they should be doing is calling your supervisor. Again, they're just an observer that day. Now, they also do not set a pace. Okay, so they should not be, if you're on a parking loop, they should not be walking ahead of you. They should not be walking side by side with you. They should be a couple steps back. You are the one in control of the pace, and don't let them push you. We used to have somebody in my office who was he was known for kind of stomping his feet loudly behind the carrier and making short, quick steps so it sounded like he was walking fast. And it was actually speeding up the carriers. And so just remember that the examiner may not set the pace for you, but should maintain a position where they can observe you only. They should not be talking about the evaluation or the volume that day. And this is a lot of times they open their big mouths first thing in the morning. They're sitting there watching you case, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you hardly have any mail today. Shoot, we should be back about an hour early. What do you think?" You know what? Don't talk to me. And if they say anything like that, you go tell your steward. Okay. Um, Make sure that you are taking your 10-minute break, or if you have two street breaks, make sure you take your two street breaks. Don't be afraid to take your comfort stops. Still going to be hot out there September 14th. You're still going to need to stop and drink water. It could be raining. Stop, put on your rain gear. Don't let them intimidate you. Again, they're only observing you. Make sure you take your full 30-minute lunch, and make sure you take it at your authorized lunch location.
And
Okay?
not to interrupt you there, but something to add with our lunch in our LMOU with Oklahoma City, we get 3 minutes of wash up time connected to our lunch. So that's something that we should be doing. That's 3 minutes that you can take to go in somewhere, wash your hands, splash some water on your face. You get 3 minutes in addition to the 30-minute lunch.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But just remember, I think the thing, where we get caught up out there on the street is our carriers do feel intimidated. And so again, hopefully you've been carrying your routes by the book every single day, and it's just habit for you, and it's no big deal. But just because somebody's out there with you doesn't mean that you're gonna go any faster. Look, a fair day's work for a fair day's pay, right? Don't have to be out there running. We're going to be consistent, like we always are. We're not going to make any mistakes and misdeliver mail, and we're going to just do everything the way that we do it throughout the course of the year. Again, this goes back to, as far as the 1564 A and B. Make sure that those things are up to date, so they're not, you know, that you are taking a lunch at a proper spot, or your break location at the proper spot, and they're not going to ding you for that, and your travel to and your travel from. Again, if you, I just want to throw this out there. Uh, be consistent. If you're not consistent the week of inspection, or especially the day of inspection, uh, that 39.99 that they generate, that's what they're going to be moving territory off of. And let's just say I'm trying to outthink myself, right? Because I want a big route cut. I think I deserve a big route cut because my route is too dang long. So I'm going to make sure that, I'm using a bunch of overtime that week. Well, let's just say I have the 100 block of Main Street. And throughout the course of the year, it takes me 15 minutes to do the 100 block of Main Street. But I'm going to outthink myself, and the week of inspection, I'm going to take 25 minutes to do 100 block of Main Street. If it so happens where they end up moving territory on my route, because again, they are doing full-blown inspections, right? They're going to move territory on almost every single route, no doubt. Once they move territory, let's say they move that 100 block of Main Street off of your route. And when they move that over, the time credit it got was 25 minutes. And then you get your 1840 and you're looking at the territory they moved and the territory you got. You're going to sit there and complain and say, well, you said the 100 block of Main Street was 25 minutes. That only takes me 15 minutes to deliver. You didn't cut enough off of my route.
Yeah.
Everybody see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Consistency is the best route adjustment. You're doing apples and apples. We don't want to play games out there because we know damn well management's going to play games. And so when everybody's playing games, that makes for a very bad adjustment.
Yeah, it's always better off just to do it like what we talked about at the very beginning of this episode, getting in habits before the route count inspection, doing things the right way all the time. That way, you're not thinking about it during inspection. You're just doing another day out on the route. And I know it is intimidating having someone with you. It's something that it's a proven fact that you act differently when you're observed, but try to overcome that. They're there, and most likely they don't want to be out there either. So just do your route the way you normally do it every day. And that I know that the few times I've been followed, that's just what's been going in my head. Like, don't speed up because they're with me. Don't do this because they're with me. Just do my route like I always do it every day.
Yeah, absolutely. That's about the best advice we can give, right? And it's just up to everybody to follow that advice. You know, the thing about full-blown route counting and inspections is if you are doing everything by the book, but 10 people in your zip code are not, you could still end up with a bad route adjustment. So, hey, we preach union, we preach uh, in knowledge there's strength, and when we all stand together, we all stay together, and everybody is better off that way. And so we have to get everybody on board. Get your case partners on board. Get those new carriers on board with knowing how to deliver your routes the way the M41 says how to deliver your routes, because it's best for us. It eliminates work injuries because we're safer, and it helps our customers because we're more accurate with the manner in which we deliver the mail.
Yeah, we're able to provide that service to them because we actually have time to do it if our routes are adjusted properly. On the street, so yeah, we get back from the street, we get to the office. We already talked a little bit about the PM office time. You fill out your 1838 and don't forget about your accountable time, all of your line 21 items you got to do. Um, and you're done, and that's it, right? That's the end of the inspection after
Well,
inspection week,
Well,
right?
it's funny you mention that. It's very funny you mention that. And for those people out there who are not going to take our advice and start to carry the route by the book each and every day, 365 days a year, you might want to listen to this. Remember, we mentioned how they can evaluate the street time, right? Either your demonstrated time during the week of inspection or that 8-week analysis. Well, I mentioned that 7 weeks, 7 random weeks are already in the books. It's already history. It takes 7 random weeks from months that have already gone by, with the exception of June, July, August, or December. But why does it say 8 weeks? Why did we say 8 weeks? Well, because the week after inspection is the eighth week, and that is going to come into play too, right? That eight
Yep.
week time card analysis, your eighth week is the week after inspection. So it's not over after it's over.
No, a lot of people forget about that. So don't forget
Yeah.
about that. Continue to do what you got
Yep.
to do. Hopefully, you make it a habit if it's not already a habit of doing your route the right way, like you're being inspected every day.
Correct. Correct. And don't forget, also after the count and inspection week, you're gonna be expected to participate in consultations. Well, you should, and management is required to have consultations with the regular carrier. So they're going to be providing the 1838s that they populate based on the 1838Cs that were completed during the count week. They have to provide those um, at least 5 calendar days in advance of a consultation with the regular carrier. They have to provide an 1840 one day in advance. And so there's certain things, if you're not getting your documentation before the consultation and they call you in for a consultation, it's the first time you've seen these documents, you need to tell your steward. Because you should be able to look at these 1838Cs, bounce them, or 1838s, bounce them off of what you see with the 1838Cs. If you see discrepancies or you have questions, those 5 days you could probably be talking to your steward and trying to figure out what you want to talk about in those consultations if you're going to challenge what management has changed or altered on these things. And it's also your opportunity during the consultation to discuss what you think the mail volume was like that week in comparison with the rest of the year, and if there's proposed adjustments, territory adjustments, what you would suggest to either retain or have some relief or whatever, and whether or not you disagree with the evaluation. Okay, any recommendations, you should be doing that. So you can be expecting those consultations and just be prepared for them. Try not to just go in there and automatically assume that management's going to do what they're going to do and you speaking to them is not going to matter. You're probably right in that they're going to try to do what they're going to do. But if you have participated and offered suggestions, or if you've shown disagreement with things, or you've challenged things that you think is wrong, those are the things that your steward needs when most likely at the end of this all, they're going to be filing a huge grievance on this.
Yeah, so it's important to give your honest feedback in that 1840 consultation of uh so they're adding territory to your route and you disagree with it. Why do you disagree with it? And if you have any recommendations of what would work better, then definitely offer up those recommendations. And if you have any of those, you're not required to sign any statements that you're agreeing to the time that they have or uh, what they've said or anything like that. But it is your chance to give a reason of agreements or disagreement to the adjustment. So be honest about it. Come to the table with as many facts as you can, uh, and any recommendations that you can. It would definitely help.
Absolutely. All right.
All right.
Well, I believe we probably did not cover everything because there's so much.
That's right. Yeah. So I think that's it. I really appreciate you coming on. I know everybody else appreciates it. This is something I think that we're probably going to be doing a lot of here in the near future. Hopefully, not too much of it, but thank you for coming on and talking about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And thanks for having me. And before I sign off, I just want to let everybody out there know that they are in good hands with Mr. Casey Ritchie. Um, he knows route adjustments. He knows how to file the grievances. And so any questions you have for him, I'm sure he would be able to help you out. And you're certainly welcome to call the MBA's office and speak with me as well. We're here to help. So, but you guys are in great hands with Casey. So, Casey, I appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so there you have it. That's everything you need to know about route adjustments. Well, not everything you need to know. That's kind of a shortened, condensed version. As we mentioned, you can do route adjustment classes for probably days about the subject matter of route inspections. But that's enough for today. Anyway, we will probably have some more information put out there. There is a class here at the hall on September 11th at 6 o'clock. We hope to see everybody there. Britain Station, you guys have been notified about a route inspection there. It's starting on September 14th. So that's the reason we're having this class mainly. So if you go to Britain Station or you know a carrier that carries out of Britain Station, encourage them to come to this class just to protect their route and everybody else's route in Britain Station. Again, it's September 11th. It starts at 6 o'clock. Anybody is welcome to come. We hope to see everybody there. Our address is 221 South Eagle Lane in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, 73128. It's closest to Reno and Council. It's just west of Council. So we hope to see everybody there. And again, John, thank you for coming on, spending your time to educate the members of Branch 458. Uh, we really appreciate it. I know I appreciate you and everything you do for members across our region. There's 5 states, and you definitely have your plate full, and I've never seen you back down from a fight. So thank you, and I appreciate you. And everybody, until next time, have a good day.